everybody. Welcome. It's another FanGirl Friday Live. My name is Anita Castellar. Our company is FanGirl Consulting and Brand Management, and we bring you a live stream every week where we talk about licensing, fandom, the business behind fandom, and hopefully you'll enjoy yourself and learn something new every week. This week, my special guest star is Chris Choy. Yay! Welcome, Chris. How are you?
What's up, guys? Hey, how's it going? Good.
I'm so glad to see you, first of all, because, COVID, pandemic world.
Right?
Kind of...
I know it's weird that this is the new norm. Like I think like 6 months ago, like the Zoom calls were like, oh, just like here and there. Now it's like everyone's parents and grandparents like just jump on a Zoom call. Let's go say hi to everyone.
Exactly. It's really fun. So we, have a good time every week. I'm sure you've tuned in. We're going to talk a little bit about you and your fandoms and, what you do. But if you would not mind, just go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us who you are and where you work.
Yeah. Hi, Chris Choy. I've been with GameStop almost 15 years now. I think it's like 14 and some change. Started off in stores there. And then from there, kind of moved to the corporate office, was a buyer and on the video game side for a while, and then moved over to, kind of fandom with like consumer products and collectibles and apparel and all that kind of stuff. And then most recently, at the beginning of the year, actually took a new role doing the private label product development. So kind of a small team doing some of this stuff, kind of almost a passing of the torch of what ThinkGeek was doing, but at a much kind of smaller scale, specifically for like GameStop stores and the website. So,
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, but I think it's been fun. It's kind of well-rounded, starting off at stores and like learning the company. So I think that's part of the reason too that I've been around for 15 years is because I kind of feel like I know the company really well and have seen all sides of it. It's funny that we're talking about fandom because that was part of the reason that I took this job, like with GameStop in general, right? Like I was 22, 23. I was a co-manager at a children's place. So being a young 20s, not married, no kids, and it was just like the job was the job. I actually saw that a local GameStop was like looking for a store manager, and I was like, yeah, let me apply for this, and ended up taking a pay cut to come over because it was just like I would, the old adage of like if you enjoy what you do, then it's not work or it's So that was kind of my philosophy at a young 20-year-old something, and I haven't looked back since. It's been a great almost 15 years.
That's awesome. So since you get to work in fandom, you probably creating a lot of things that you wanted as a kid. Let's throw it back. Let's go back to little Chris Choy, and tell us about your fandoms and like kind of how does that frame up your thinking nowadays?
Yeah. I mean, I was fortunate enough to be, like a child of the 80s where there was like no shortage of like fandom, no shortage of like content, right? Like Saturday morning cartoons were a thing, and it was just like that's what you did, and everyone kind of knew it. So, I was a Hasbro kid, I think, very early on with like G.I. Joe. That was kind of my big thing. Also, like He-Man, Masters of the Universe, until like I was kind of into that, and then as I kind of grew up, really got into comics for a while. And it just like my nerddom kind of continued to blossom, if you will. Like, and from there, I remember playing Magic in like middle school, and so it was just kind of like all over the board. I think in most, like probably my biggest fandom though overall is probably Star Wars, and I think that's kind of like where you and I had kind of like our connection too. It's just like I think it's just one of those things that, like, there's just something that resonates with Star Wars, and whether it's the original trilogy or even with like the newer stuff, there's just like something there that's just like if you put the R2D2 like white, silver, and blue on something, like I want it, like I have to have it, right? Even like I see like your SMS headphones, like the Boba Fett stuff. There's just something about that shade of green. Like that's how much of a nerd I am, is that I can see a sliver of your headphones, but I know exactly which ones they were. Yeah, we actually, I remember we tested and we brought those in to GameStop stores back when I was the audio buyer.
Yeah.
And they told me the funny story of like SMS Audio was originally like contracted out to do 50 cents line. And I guess he got so tired of like the red tape and of like having to answer questions, he bought the company so that way it would just like move along. I always thought that was like one of like the funniest stories of hearing of him. He was like, no, he just decided that he wanted things to go his way, so he just bought the company.
Yeah, I wish I could do that, right? I just wish things
Right? Yeah.
I could just buy whatever I want and then I would rule the world. So
Yeah.
it's so great that way. Yeah, I mean that's how we ended up, getting to know each other. We would overlap. We were at different cons and
Yeah.
people in our circles tend to like roll in the same circles and then you get to know everybody else and
Yeah.
that's how we had that connection. It was so great. I mean because we could talk fun stuff and we could be friends and we could be friendly outside of work and then when we had to do some work we could do some good business together as well. So I think that's really interesting. I mean our community, whether it be in fandom but also in work, we tend to, not that we tend to just work with each other, but it's great when you can have like-minded people that already get what you're trying to do, like your goal.
Yeah.
And you don't have to worry about trying to educate that person. It feels very heavy,
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think I mean, it's twofold, right? One, I think when it comes to like the products and the marketing and the campaigns and everything, it's like speaking the same language makes all the difference in the world, right? Like finding the little things that you see, like, like the things that you notice and, like, oh, this is in the background or we want this and we like this colorways and like all that. I think that just helps make things like more seamless for sure. And to your point, I think just in our world of just fandom in general, not even like the business side, is like there's just like a gravitational pull, right? Like you find your people no matter what. Like like and I think whether you're like a 16-year-old kid attending your first convention, it's just like all these people, they just find their people no matter what. Like when I was in school growing up, you found people that kind of were into the same things and and those are the things that kind of solidified like friendships and that became your crew. Those were the people that you went to cons with, that whether it's a Comic-Con or anime convention or whatever. Like it was for whatever reason, there is something special that there is this gravitational pull of like you just find your people and you find the things that you're into together and I think that joy too of like exposing them to the things that you're into that they may not be as keen into, or you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. No, I love the use of the word joy, right? Because, that's also how I feel like every day I would get up and go to work. And that was the whole purpose. Like there are some days, I'm sure that you feel the same way, that there are slogs, right? Working in fandom, folks, is not always easy. We love it.
Never. And,
we love everyone that appreciates it. And thanks for keeping us employed sometimes. But like, really it's a slog and it can be a downer sometimes when you're thinking about, oh, I got to work these numbers or I have to make the budget, or I don't know if you felt like the same way, but I would go to these cons and people wouldn't know who I was or what I was doing. And they would hold up a project that I had worked on and then they're telling me all these things about it that they loved. And I'm like, okay, now I can go back to work.
Yeah. No, I, for a while I was kind of managing apparel for GameStop. And I loved what I was like seeing my stuff in the wild, right? So to your point, like just to see people that are wearing your t-shirts that you bought and for stores or whatever, like it's there's something kind of cool about that. And even now, like I remember, I think as early as like last week, I was like walking somewhere and I was like, that was a shirt that I bought for GameStop like a year ago. It's just cool. It's like one of those things like, yeah, like I'm glad that he liked that, like I feel like it kind of gives you a little perk. You just feel like, yeah, that's cool. Like-minded people, like they enjoyed the design, they like what I did, they bought it. So, they like it enough to wear.
It's validating of the effort and the work that you put into the design or the idea or the project, but it also is also validating that, enough about that consumer base to be able to kind of not predict always, but kind of say, okay, this is something that they might like. And so then that probably feeds into your choices, right? I would imagine, for the stores.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's interesting as a buyer because I mean, obviously knowing the fandom is a big deal, and having kind of that inside, like the insight to picking designs or the products and what you want. But then there's also kind of the balance on like where you're at as a retailer. So, I mean, the decisions that I make as GameStop, back when I was kind of in that role, would be drastically different if I were at a Walmart or a Target or a Hot Topic, right? Like there's different things kind of within your consumer base and like what's in store and how is it presented, and that can kind of change that. And I think that's what's always fun. That's what I had fun with, is because there was this combination with GameStop is like, we're not necessarily like where people are finding stuff out first, but it's nice to have a large enough store count that, I mean, all of us as like buyers and product developers, it's like you have enough stores that you kind of have free reign to do stuff, and you're not worried about like, oh, am I going to be able to make enough of these to sell it? Because working with factories and stuff, you've got MOQs and you have to do so many. And so like it's nice to kind of have that creative outlet and be able to say like, okay, I like this, and even if I just when I wanted to like test something that was like a small run or something like that, I still had enough stores and the ability to do that it kind of gives you like that free reign to do stuff. James Parker, a friend of ours that was there, like that was one of the things I think he enjoyed the most too, is because he was able to take a lot of these ideas, but to have 3,500 stores is, you could come up with some of these unique ideas and be able to do stuff with that store count that you couldn't at a smaller retailer.
And that allows for unique opportunity, like unique merchandise opportunities and stuff. I feel like I go into GameStops, and maybe a lot of other folks are the same way, where we go into GameStops to just kind of browse around and see what's new today, right? What else is out there that I haven't seen yet?
Yeah.
So do you think, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Oh no, and it's probably what you're about to ask. Like I still, and I'm not just saying this because obviously I'm team GameStop, but like I still love brick and mortar experiences. Like there's something about just walking into stores and just finding things versus searching a website, right? Like there's something just about, does it catch your eye? And like there's, it's to me, it's that different experience that's less out of convenience and more out of desire, right? Like, yes, buying things online, it's great when I'm like, oh, I need protein shakes or whatever. So let me just do a quick thing. And I don't need to like search the aisles for protein. But like if I'm shopping, if I'm looking for shirts, I mean, it's tough. If you go into retailers and you just type in like Star Wars shirt, you could have hundreds, if not thousands of search results. And it's just trying to narrow that down and stuff, where it's like, I'm looking at a t-shirt wall or a t-shirt tower and seeing like, these designs catch my eye, I like that. Or even the things that you wouldn't have looked for, right? Because that's the other thing, is just like that discovery of things that you had no intention of finding or buying, that you're like one of the best-selling shirts that we ran, back when I was kind of doing some of the apparel stuff, was cats in a ramen bowl. But I would have never found that,
seen that shirt.
Right? Like, right? Yeah, it was. It's not something that I would have been like, let me see. I wonder what good ideas for t-shirts. And you just, it's like there's that discoverability that you're like, oh my god, it's a cute design. I love that. I want that. So I'm like, I even like, it's funny because I will always go to the grocery store for my wife, because I still love that idea of like shopping. And me, you see my social media posts, I'm the most basic person when it comes to pumpkin. So like October for me, going to the grocery store, I'm like, what kind of pumpkin stuff do they have today? Right? Like,
you're browsing all the they should just do a pulled together statement just for you in your grocery store.
Oh, they do. And I definitely like, if I had the time and energy, I would be like the basic girl, like haul of like, let me show you all the stuff that I got at Trader Joe's this week. Like, yeah.
I'm going to look for that post next week. I would love to see that.
Oh, there's pictures. There's pictures, and it's like the end of September, early October, like every year in my memories of like, well, he went to Trader Joe's that week. Here's the 15 pumpkin things that he got.
I love that. I guess that's your own subset of fandom. There's the pumpkin spice.
Pumpkin. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And sneakers.
Sneakers. Yes, for sure. Yeah. I was shopping this morning and did not get the ones that I wanted, unfortunately, but thus is life. But like, I think like fandom, the good thing is like, there's always something new. Like, I think and that's the thing that I think that really keeps us employed is like, there's this constant desire for new stuff, right? New ways to express your fandom, new products, new ideas, honestly, like re-releases of old products and stuff like that, because like you're just never satisfied. Like at no point, I think, like, have we ever gone and be like, yeah, I don't think I need any more Star Wars shirts. I don't think I need any more of like anything. If you see something, you're like, I like it, I want it, I buy it. I don't know where I'm going to put it. And I don't know, like, there may be a point like, okay, I guess I could finally retire this shirt from like 6 years ago. But I mean, that's it. There's this insatiability that I think that we all have as fans, that you go, I'm in this, I like this. And again, like, I'm like, I've had 4 different, C3PO or R2D2 phone cases, but you know what? If I get a new iPhone 12 next month and I see one, I'll probably buy it.
I'll probably get another one. Then we have like a museum of cases, cell phone cases, along with your consoles and whatever else that we, nerd out about.
Yeah, exactly.
But, it's interesting because you said, I want to buy this, or I want to show that I'm into this, that also goes with lack of stigma around showing what you're into, right? Because I feel like, when we were younger, there wasn't this, and maybe it's just, regionality or what have you, but there wasn't always this general acceptance of people showing their fandom, showing their geekdom about particular topics or particular things, and maybe, or it was for kids. It wasn't for young adults or teenagers. It wasn't cool, so I feel like there's a big change in that. And that goes back to the retail piece of how you function on a daily basis and where you were. I feel like that's created that opportunity in that window for like a GameStop, to exist.
Yeah, no, I mean, for sure. I think in general, the culture has become much more accepted, right? Like, just like you said, I think, growing up, there was a different kind of mentality about some of that stuff. And truly, like, for adults, right? For those of us that are, out of our 20s and our 30s, closer to the 40s and all of that stuff. It was, and I would still say there's still not, in certain maybe like subgroups, they don't get it, but it's definitely more commonplace to be like, oh yeah, this guy's into this and he expresses his fandom and it's great and it's not that big of a deal. And honestly, I think some of that too, like with social media, of like seeing more acceptance with everyone, and again, like people showing off their collections and stuff and finding groups and seeing friends that are doing that, where it's more exposed and out in the open, instead of just like kind of like, I have a bunch of like, 6 scale figures that are kind of in this cabinet over here that no one else sees unless they're at my house. Like, people are like proud of that stuff, and it's definitely that. And I do think, I've always said GameStop is this weird cross section of, it's like, we're not mass retail, but we have that kind of exposure in a certain sense, to where like we're like Starbucks, right? Everyone knows where the closest GameStop is. Everyone knows who GameStop is. It's a brand that you kind of trust, and it's there's somewhere between being comfortable because it's a brand you trust, but being able to kind of find unique things, right? Just like you were saying, when you like to shop and stuff, because that's where, I mean, even back when I was in stores, when I first started, like, that's why people came to GameStop. Like, you don't go to GameStop just because you're looking for video games. It's like, there's something about that interaction with the store associates. There's being able to bounce ideas or have a conversation about stuff, whether it's me as a super fan or a gamer and that knows what I'm talking about, or helping mom come in who says, oh, I've got, my son is into this, they like this, and we have this, what do you got? Or my daughter's first getting into video games, and she likes this, is there anything that you could recommend? Like, there's something, I think that's where GameStop is unique, is because we kind of bring that experience, instead of just walking into other retailers and be like, can I get that game behind the cabinet? And that's it. Or like, here it is in the shelf. Like, I think that's kind of that lost art, when it comes to like this space at times, for sure.
Yeah, I completely agree. I love that interaction with the associates because, there's been times, just even hardware, right? Like, I have this piece that I want to connect to this. I at one point we needed, a microphone to replace something else, or, for a game, because we're big karaoke game people, and so it's like, okay, so the associates were knowledgeable enough about the equipment or, you know, the interactions of the two hardware pieces or the systems or the games or whatever it was. You like, to your point, I was also kind of like, I'm that mom sometimes where I have to buy for somebody else and I don't know that other child as well, but I know more or less their interests, their age range, you know, those types of things. And I can give those kind of data points to the associate and they would direct me. So this is the newest thing, or this is the hottest thing, or this is like underground, or this is, so that is a unique and very different, I think, differentiator for GameStop. And it kind of reminds me of Toys R Us, you know, where you could go in and kind of have those same interactions with the associates. I feel like, you know, unfortunately we have no more Toys R Us here in the US. You know, but I felt like that was kind of a similar aspect where you can go in and browse around and get that interaction and, you know, have that eventized kind of feel too. But it was in a different genre for GameStop versus Toys R Us.
Yeah. And I think there's something too about that feeling of like the pull together, just like you were saying, of just like, oh, here's the new cartoon that's kind of out, or, you know, the new show, or like a new line of action figures, and just like feeling like seeing all of that kind of pull together, that they definitely, I definitely still miss Jeffrey for sure.
Yeah, poor guy. Oh, well, maybe he'll come back around in a different way. I mean, he has, but you know, we'll see if the old Toys R Us model comes back in some fashion. But that's also another thing as far as like retail and like trends, and not only IP trends, which I would love to hear what your thoughts are on that, like at retail and stuff. Like there's this whole big growing segment of, like, not that we didn't know about it, but there's a big wave of anime, you know, popularity coming out. And then there's the going back, the retro, you know, so part of that is interesting for retail trends, like purchasing and what people are into. But then also, you know, there's also technology things that are in retail. There's also, like, you have a role now, which is product development driven versus just buying. And I don't know if people understand all of the differences between those two types of roles. So let's start with your role, and then let's kind of go into like where we think, you know, some trends might be in this year and in the next.
Yeah, no, for sure. So product development, like my job essentially is to make goods, right? Make products, whether, you know, we can do things that are unlicensed. So if I just, like we were talking about, a cats in a ramen t-shirt, if I have an artist draw design, because I'm terrible as an artist and would never try and attempt that myself. But yeah, we could commission a piece of art or whatever, throw it on a t-shirt, easy peasy, done, right? We could take that same concept, put it on a tote bag, you know, sweatshirt, whatever, things that are kind of like easy and quick turn. We can make a plush out of it. That's kind of like the basic, right? Where, you know, our connection kind of is in the fandom, in the license world. We're taking that kind of same mentality of making goods, but then we acquire a license from everyone. So, like, you know, we've got Pokemon and Nintendo and Dungeons and Dragons, you know, with Hasbro and G.I. Joe and some other cool stuff. So we're taking that and then we're making goods for those properties. And generally, you know, for the public that don't know, they tend to segment those things out. So just because I have Pokemon doesn't mean I can make anything that I want to. Like, part of that contract in that agreement is you say, okay, you know, we want to pay you X amount a year, and with that we get the license to do these product groups. So it may be we can do houseware, so I can do lighting, or, you know, pillows and drinkware and stuff like that. Or it can be, you know, small consumer electronics. So like with Lucas, one of our big hits last year, and we're still replaying this year, was a Millennium Falcon charger. So it's one of the induction chargers that you kind of set your phone on and it charges, but it's in the shape of the Millennium Falcon, right? So it's stuff like that you know, it's even as a product developer, it's you're still balancing this idea of the fandom, what you like, what you want as you know, as a fan, but then trying to balance out of, like, okay, well, what price point does it need to be at? What can I sell it for? What are the cost of goods, and how much is it going to cost once it actually hits the shelves? And like that, in tandem with the buyer, you're trying to kind of figure out that special sauce. Of like, what's that right price point? What's the right features? What does it need to look like? Right. Who are the characters? You know, does the product category make sense? You know, and even little things of, like, you know, okay, if I'm doing something for this Pokemon character. Does the shape need to be different? Because maybe it skews a little more feminine or a little more masculine. Does the time of year affect that in a major way? You know, right? Like is
seasonality,
Gengar,
holidays.
Yeah. Ghost Pokemon during October, novel idea, right? The Score Bunny from the new, Pokemon game, like he's a bunny, probably good for Easter, right? Like just stuff like that you want. It's like the layers in, and I really think that's where those of us that are fans within that space tend to be able to take things to kind of the next level of like, it's just like the little bits and pieces that you can kind of throw in there that just kind of elevate the product just by having that kind of product knowledge.
Yeah, that little bit of extra sauce. And so
absolutely.
In this case, then you're ideating, you're developing, meaning you literally are working through samples and, working with sculptors, working with a factory who will then produce that on behalf of GameStop. Yep. And then there's a purchasing aspect that comes in, and then it comes in on a ship or a truck or what have you, and then it arrives at the shelf to a local GameStop near you. So that's the difference between, that's a product development role, but then what's the difference between that and a buyer?
Yeah, so I'm almost acting like, I would say almost like a third party vendor, right? Like I'm making the goods, I'm working with the buyer on things that they like. But at the end of the day, the buyer is the one that's going to control, like, what's the quantity? When do they want it? How many do they want? So it's I think unique maybe in our world at GameStop, because we do kind of have this division of like, I just can't go make a bunch of stuff and then say, okay, hey, I decided to make 30,000 R2D2 chargers, go figure out how to sell these. It's this combination of like, okay, here's our product idea. We kind of take this product idea, we work with the buyers to say, do you like this idea? Are there things you want to change? What does the timing look like? And, kind of the simple business of it too is them buying 20,000 units of something versus buying 2,000 units of something, that it changes economies of scale. So you can change your retail, it'll change the cost. So it's just kind of that partnership that works through. Luckily, I think I kind of had an inside path to it, because since I was already on that side, I think I can kind of speak the language a little more and make it easier. B, I'm literally dealing with the same people that were my coworkers, right? So it makes it easier because I'm not going in and like trying to cold sell new product. It's like I have this relationship that, like one of my housewares buyers, he was my assistant merchant before. So it's like, I'm kind of like, hey, you like this idea? And we can kind of cut through all of the red tape and just be like, do you like it? Do you not like it? If you don't like the idea, whatever. Or I can be like, would you like it if it was at this price point? Or, like I can kind of read him a little bit better because we have worked together, for quite some time, instead of just, again, I think where a lot of third party, like people, other licensors, like you had Loungefly on before, when they're going in to talk to one of our buyers, it's just a cold product pitch and saying, here's what we've got, here's what we're going to make. Do you want it? How many do you want? Where we're kind of working in tandem to do that. Now they'll do it a little bit, but obviously for us, it's great because everything that we do, we can kind of keep in house, where I know personally as a buyer, there's always like this fear of like, you didn't want to give them all of your best ideas all the time because you're worried that you're like, that's cool, I gave you these great ideas and now it's available everywhere. So it's like, you kind of wanted to like have those conversations, be like, okay, look, I'll tell you what I want, but I want it to be exclusive for some time point, or like, tell me what I need to make this exclusive or whatever. Right.
Yeah, it's interesting though, because from the licensee perspective, the person who's coming in to pitch the product, they usually hold the license, the contract, all of those things of what you're outlining. And in licensing terms, that's called a DTR, or a direct to retail license, where a license or IP holder actually contracts the retailer themselves to create those products. And the other traditional licensing is, there's a manufacturer, example being Loungefly to your point, or some other t-shirt, manufacturer or something like that. They go to the licensor, the IP owner, say, we would like to manufacture these products. Please give us a contract. They negotiate that out. And then it's their job to go around to the various buyers, the various retail outlets, and actually pitch those products and see who's interested in picking them up. The point that overlaps with what you were just making, as far as like, how do you make this exclusive? Don't take my idea and put it everywhere else. The licensees are kind of afraid to give the buyers a little bit of they're not their best idea sometimes too, because then they're like, oh, well, they're going to take this promotion idea and work with somebody else, or just do it in house, you know? So there's always this dance between the body.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see too, because I mean, there's definitely stuff that you see. Like, I think one of the best things that is when you've got the partners that you do a lot of business with, it's easier to kind of continue those conversations and keep things special. I love when you see like where like capsules become a thing, right? Like, you know, and seeing that we're like, okay, they're doing this whole thing, this whole collection, and it like that's unique to them. I think that helps keep things unique and fresh. And the product ideas that kind of spur out of that, out of necessity for retailers to be different, I think helps keep it chugging along, because we don't want to see the same, you know, 5 Marvel shirts at every retailer, right? Like, like what's the point of like, if it's literally going to be the same shirt that I can get in a GameStop and a Walmart, then like, why are we carrying it? So it's like unique art, unique designs, unique characters. I mean, I definitely think that there's room to play, but it definitely, I feel like it gets a little harder because it seems like this base has grown so much that it is really available like everywhere, you know? I mean, you can find stuff now like Five Below, and you're like, wow, like I saw Jurassic Park t-shirt at Five Below, and you're like, man, like, you know, things that you weren't like kind of expecting to see, and you're just like, oh wow, you know, like it's great to see some of that stuff that's a little more mainstream. But I think as a retailer, it's tough too, because like everyone is trying to find their niche, and with everything, especially now during the pandemic and so much being done online, it's like you're just fighting for that like mind share and stuff. But you know, it's interesting to see how retail shifts, but you know, there's the good and the bad with that. Again, you know, like I look at other retailers and you see it. It's like if you are trying to find stuff, sometimes like it's just so hard to find, because it's like you literally type in your search term, you're like, there's 75 pages, and like I'll never make it past 3. You know.
Nope. Well, I think that's a data metric too, right? Like I think everybody kind of understands that when you're on the business side, if your search parameters are not at the top, first page, maybe the second page, you're never going to get found, because nobody's going to go past page 2 to 3, maybe 4, if that person's very industrious. So it's kind of hard.
Oh, for sure. And I think what it's for us working at GameStop, it was always a blessing and a curse as a buyer, because we had so little space compared to, you know, other places. Like our stores are a lot smaller, right? We're a specialty retailer. So it's like you had to make it work with like the best assortment that you can make possible. And I think it was, that kind of made it fun and challenging to kind of say like, okay, you know, I remember it was kind of like, we got 2 shelves for Star Wars and it's a movie year. Go. You know, like all of us are trying, like nuts. everyone's trying to like figure out, okay, like what can we do? And I literally remember trying to plan against stuff. We're like, okay, well, what if we turn that sideways and you just see like the spine or something? Like maybe we can get like one more thing in there and stuff. So it was definitely interesting and unique. But you know, for GameStop, it's been fun to see it grow and become such a major piece of the puzzle. Because you know, I started off on the video game side, and I saw this actually kind of start and come to fruition. I kind of inherited our quote unquote collectibles section when I first kind of came on, and it was I still remember it was 2 like little cash wrap fixtures, like at the front of the cash wrap, that had 2 or 3 shelves on each fixture. That was it. And so it was like I literally like I had 2 or 3 vendors, and it was just like it was Funko before they were what they are now. I wish I would have kept all my samples from back then, because they're probably worth a lot more money. And like McFarlane and like BioWorld for like t-shirts and stuff. And we didn't even have the space. So like BioWorld, what they were actually doing is they were shrink wrapping t-shirts to fit in like a small, like basically like the size of like a DVD case. And so like we had to prepackage them, because we were like, oh, well, like our stores can't fold t-shirts all day long. Like, you know, like no one's willing to commit to that. So it was like pre-shrunk wrapped and stuff. And like, I remember that kind of grew. And then, you know, someone else kind of took over that category. It grew from there, and it spun off to be like its own kind of like little group and like division within like our merchandising team, which I eventually joined. But it's been fun to see it kind of happen. And it's truly like, I think because our store associates are fans, that they get it and they understand it, and it's easy for them to sell. And it's like, it's not a forced thing. It's not like, some of the other things where you walk in and be like, okay, yeah, like I see them trying to pitch stuff, and like, every place you walk into now, like, everyone's trying to pitch kind of like the next thing. But like this one was always like the easy thing. Like we immediately saw it once we started to put product in the stores, it was selling. Like there wasn't like a hard sell of like, we didn't see many emails of like, why are we doing this? Everyone's like, I love it. Can we get more?
Well, it was a companion piece, right, to the fandom, because if you're going in to get your Pokemon, whatever game, or if you're going in to get the next Halo game or whatever it is, and you got the hardware there, the peripherals, you've got the system, you've got the video game itself or what have you, then you've got t-shirts. Why not? I mean, it's just, it's kind of, preaching to the choir at that point, because that person's there already. It's a captured audience. So I think that was really great that you guys were able to flip that. I mean, how do you, or what do you say to people when they're like, oh, GameStop, it's really rough right now, they're having a rough patch, or how are they going to continue to sustain themselves when they've got video game sales kind of going weird? I mean, it's video games are going, in a whole different direction and just to begin with, but how do you balance that?
It's kind of interesting because, we actually, like during the pandemic, we did pretty well, all things considered, right? There's definitely, gamers, they're going to game no matter what, pandemic or not, right? And it's funny because they, I remember like hearing, you hear tidbits kind of early on of like, we actually do well when times are rough, like financially, like, during like recessions, or I don't even what you want to call it. But it's one of the best kind of bang for your bucks that you can get, right? You can buy a $50 video game that you can play for countless hours, right? And it's a good use of that money versus going out to eat, right?
Right.
You take the family, you go out to eat, you spend how much money, and you've got your meal for an hour, and then you're done. Whereas, you buy a video game, and again, you can play that for that long. Plus, with the pre-owned too, that adds kind of that extra piece in there of like, it doesn't have to be a $50 new video game every time. There's a back catalog of things that you never got into play, which is, I think that's what also separates us, is having that store associate that's knowledgeable of, that simple like service of walking in and saying, hey, what are you doing? Like, oh, I'm just looking for some Switch games. And then like that leading question of like, well, what are you into? And then they go, oh, I like RPGs. I like this. Well, have you played this? Have you played this? Have you tried that? And, getting that initial feedback of like, oh, I love this style. And then you go, okay, well, have you played this? Okay, cool. Try this one. And, like that was always, I think, that's what keeps people coming back. It was always that kind of interaction of kind of making the recommendations, having that knowledge, having the trust to know like this guy knows what he's talking about, instead of just like, this is new, I can tell you that this is new, and like that's it, right? Like there's and this isn't to downplay what some of our competitors do, but they're not knowledgeable about that stuff. The same people that are working in the video game department are also managing cameras and TVs and all this other stuff. So it's like they're not subject matter experts in everything. So it's great. And I've always said, and then even when I was in stores, like that was the thing that separated us. Is doing that, and our customers that come in, like that's why they come in. It's because, I mean, truth be told, like you said, you can buy video games anywhere. Right. I could 3 clicks and a quick checkout anywhere, and they're delivered to our door. But that's great for the one thing that I know that I want. But what about the things that I don't know that I want, or if I want to get feedback or something? And I mean, heck, I can tell you too, like having worked in stores, when you see that disgruntled look on someone's face the week that a game comes out, and within 2 days they're back returning it or trading it because it's terrible. Like, but those are the types of things that you could, your regular customers, you never want to like dissuade a purchase, but there's times you're like, you may not want,
they ask you, how was this? And you give them that look like,
like, I don't want to say anything bad,
Right.
but and that's where, like, again, because we carried like used video games that had like a 7-day like money back guarantee, right? If you didn't like it because it was already open and played, you could try it. I'd always be like, let me show you the pre-owned one that I got in 2 days ago, which, if you notice, was 2 days after it released.
Yeah.
Try this one. If you don't like it, you can bring it back. And, you know, like, and if they liked it, great. Hey, you know, like, you know, not everything is
but that
everyone's
builds
cup of tea.
trust. That builds trust
Exactly.
with the consumer, that builds trust with your brand, that builds trust with that person. Like they might come back to that person and say, hey, you know, I really appreciate that recommendation because it really worked out, or I was so glad that I bought the pre-owned because it didn't work out.
Yeah.
So that really,
Exactly.
I mean, that does build trust. And that's really important in retail and in every other business, you know, aspect that we do, because it is built off of those relationships. You know, fans know if you put something out there and it's overpriced or low quality or what have you, just disrespectful. That's what I call it. Just disrespectful, you know, they'll tell you, and they can smell it a mile away. They can smell that stuff a mile away.
Oh, for sure. And I think, you know, specialty retail, like, and that's the thing that I think, you know, like the Wall Street or whatever you want to say, like they don't see, it's like that day-to-day interaction. It's like specialty retail, it's the comic book shops. It's like a barber shop, right? It's like people go in and just say, you know, I'm going to spend 30 minutes there. And, you know, we hope that they buy something, but they don't all the time. And that's okay. But they're constantly coming back and they're shooting the breeze with the store managers. And, you know, like you develop this relationship and it's great. Like, I really do think that's what kind of keeps us going. And, you know, like it takes a special person, I think, to be a GameStop store manager, because it really is like you're trying to balance all of these things, right? Like, you know, you're running the store, you're talking to customers all the time. They expect you to know everything, so it's like, you know, and you can only know so much. Like, you know, like I remember during like the DS and the Wii days, you're just like, it's a game about cats. I don't know like much more than that. But you know, like I can come on,
you didn't play Cooking Mama? Come on.
I did play Cooking Mama, but I still remember there was like cats, dogs too, hamsters, like all with a Z. I think Ubisoft put it out. It was great. Like we sold a ton of them, but I was just like, I didn't play those. I'm sorry. I will be the first to admit, my friends at Ubisoft, you know, who may click the link at some point and see, I didn't play Cats on the DS or the Wii. But
I had a couple
but I sold
kids
a lot
who
of them
did.
for you.
I knew some kids in this household who played the cats and the dogs, and we
Yeah.
didn't get to the hamsters one, but yeah, there were a few of those in our household.
Yeah.
For sure.
I remember it was funny, Cooking Mama. At one point there was I think it was like Cooking Mama 3, one of the editions that actually came with like it was Babysitting Mama. And
we still have
there
the
was
baby.
the baby. That was the running joke around the office. They would just like randomly show up in people's cubes and stuff like that, or like on their hood. It was fun. Those are some.
That baby's still in
fun
this house.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that in the heydays of the Wii, there was not an accessory that no one didn't pitch, that everyone was just like, we decided to do this. And so like everything from like the motorcycle handlebars to, I think at one point there was like an inflatable cart for Mario Kart. Like everything was like, there was nothing off the table during the Wii days.
Yeah. But it made it fun. I mean, you got to admit, it was kind of neat to have the tangible, you know, kind of bring that imagination to life, you know, kind of piece.
And I mean, it was great for the industry too. You know, there were a lot of people who weren't into video games, like my parents, that were like, I think I want a Wii. And sure enough, for like that year, I mean, they played it pretty consistently and they enjoyed it. So it's, and I definitely, there was something so intuitive about it just worked, right? Like, you know, like you didn't need it. It was easy to pick up, easy to play. And I think that's like one of the things that, you know, like why it did so well. It was just like literally you could give someone like a 2-minute tutorial and next, you know, like, you know, your grandma's playing tennis. Like,
and I love that about the Wii, actually, because it was so ubiquitous. Like it made gaming for anybody, and it wasn't like this hardcore. You had to understand which controller combinations and which button, and you know, it was like just swing the darn thing, you know, because that was all that people understood, or you could do a little fitness with it, and you didn't have to overstrain yourself or something, and feel like someone was going to laugh at you either. It was,
Yeah.
I felt like that was the best part about the Wii, and I kind of feel like we're missing a little bit about that now, because it's gotten so specialized in the controller. It's almost very intimidating. And I love video games and such, but I will be the first to admit that I'm a button masher, right? So all of these like combinations, the up, down, right bar, right bumper, this, I'm like, I'm done. Just give me Tekken, and I'm going to smash that button all day. And I'm good.
Yeah. I always joke, because like my wife, she doesn't play video games, but like she'll love to like play the first like 3 levels of a Mario game. So she always like, it's like, are you gonna give me the new Mario? Like, yeah. And then like 10 minutes later, she's like, can you beat this level for me? And it's just like, it's like, it's a given. Every Nintendo system that we've ever had, I'm just like, I show it to her and she's like, okay, great. And then she's like, I'm on level 1, 2. Can you beat this for me? So, but there is something that about like just that ease, right? Of being able, it's just accessible, which I really do think like that's probably the most intimidating thing, is when you get into like shooters and stuff like that, and you're like, okay, having to use the 2 thumbsticks is like, unless you know what you're doing, like that's one of the hardest things to kind of overcome, right? It's like tons of people who were around during like Nintendo days and whatever, like they get the idea of, I can use my left hand to control my movement and then like jump, fire, shoot, whatever, like that's the easy part. But when you're like, no, you need to use this to control your camera, and then you use like your trigger fingers in order to shoot, then they're just like, I give up, I'm done. Like this is too complicated.
And that's unfortunate, because people who still love gaming, they still want to participate in a certain way. So it's just kind of, well, anybody who's watching in video games, we're giving you a tip. Make it more ubiquitous, make it easier for your folks to be able to play along.
Yeah, well, I think, and that's where I think a lot of mobile gaming came into play, right?
True.
Is because then everyone was just like, I just pick up my phone or play on my iPad, and I mean, it'd be interesting to see how much in advanced time there is in the world because of people changing the time on their iPhone or their iPad to get more Candy Crush lives.
Yeah, I have to admit, I've never done that. I really haven't, but I do know folks who do change their time so they can get some more Candy Crush rewards.
Yeah, that was my wife, and I think it like she was doing it to where she was like scrolling instead of like just doing it like, okay, I'm gonna do it a couple hours. So like she was doing this, and I was like, your iPad says it's 2067. Like, I don't think you could do this anymore.
Talk about Back to the Future. Like, oh my gosh. Okay, so what do you see what's foreshadowing, I guess, maybe, or what are you looking to work on in the next few months? I mean, we're all still kind of in this weird pandemic mode. Some parts of the country are a little bit further along than others, but what do you think's gonna kind of work into play, especially during video games and everything else that's been happening?
Yeah. I mean, for our team, it's actually business as usual. We've got a lot more projects going on than we did last year. We're slowly, kind of ramping up and building, our repertoire of like, okay, we like these piece types, these performed. Okay, how do we do the next version of that? So it's been interesting to see, firsthand, because it was trying to learn a new job. And then the pandemic hit, and learning to do it remotely has been, an interesting challenge, right? Because there's not like let me just like pop into my boss's office and be like, hey, I got this question. Like, there's like a little more like, okay, doing it, like how many things can I kind of learn on my own? But it's been fun. And, like I said, we've got a lot of things kind of on our plate. Our team, I love our team. Like we all work great together. And it's funny, we've kind of, excuse me, everyone's got their kind of individual skill sets, and it's been fun to see like how that has kind of come to fruition. And like they can help me out with other things that on like the product management side, and I've been able to kind of help them navigate GameStop in general, right? 15 years, it's just like knowing the person who to talk to, like, oh, email so and so and do this, and it's kind of help. So it's been great. And for us, like I said, the product types, they haven't really changed. We're still, full speed ahead with all of our licenses and all of the products kind of within those categories, whether it's drinkware, small electronics, apparel, different housewares and lighting and stuff like that. So yeah, we've got some great stuff coming out this holiday. I can't wait. Like I'm at this point now where I'm a proud papa. Like
Yeah.
I see my products that are like literally are like a week or two from starting to hit shelves, and I'm just like, God, like I just can't wait to see until this stuff like hits the stores.
Yeah.
Is it a good product? Is it going to sell? I've got a bunch of stuff that's, like I said, probably in the next couple of weeks are going to start to hit stores.
Okay.
I'm super excited to see some of those unique items. Yeah.
So you think there's going to be a big Black Friday push? Should we keep our eyes on GameStop, or is it going to be more like kind of steady releases throughout the holiday season?
I'm really curious to see how Black Friday goes this year. I haven't really, I haven't seen what our plans are as a company, but I have seen like other retailers where they're just like, they're not doing it. Right.
Yeah.
And it's weird because I mean, yes, it's the pandemic, but it's like this exact opposite of what has been going on. Of like, it started off where it was like Black Friday, and it was like opening at 7, 6, 5, 3, opening at midnight, opening Thursday at 8. Like it just like it was like pretty soon, like it was going to be like like opening Wednesday night for Black Friday. Like
it's true.
Just skip Thanksgiving and go straight to the store.
Turkeys in the store.
But it's retail, and the hard part is it's like you start to do that, and there's this combination, right, of like, not only do we have to worry about like what the competitors are doing, and you want to make sure, like, you don't want to be closed for 12 hours while your competitor in the same shopping centers selling out of everything, right? And then the flip to that too is like internally, right, retailers, just like every company, public company, it's like you have comps. You can't like, like I sold this much last year on Black Friday. The expectations are going to be that you do the same thing. So I'm really curious to see, like, after this year too, like, is this going to be like a blip on the radar? And hey, okay, Walmart, you decided you're not going to do Black Friday. Like, what happens next year? Are we like, do we just skip a year?
Is it a
like,
reset, or is it just going back?
Yeah. Are we back to, deals starting Wednesday night at midnight, or is it going to, change? So I'm really curious to see. I'm really curious too to see, because I'm a shopper. I love going out to stores, and like Black Friday, like I don't shop too much and like actually purchase because I hate the lines. But I love like being out and just seeing stuff. And, I think it's just old habits die hard of being a retailer, just seeing what's going on, shopping competition. But I'm really curious to see like what that's going to look like too, when they say, okay, so how much inventory are they going to keep just in stores versus how much they're just going to keep in all of their distribution centers? Because they're going to say, okay, let's keep, so much of it online, because so many people are only going to shop that way. They don't want to fight the crowds, even Black Friday or Thanksgiving, Black Friday, whatever it is, when those deals come out. I mean, I don't know that it's going to be the pandemonium where people are, fighting each other for a TV, but there's still going to be some out there. So I'm curious to see like how that gets balanced out, right? Like how much of it you put in stores versus how much you keep online.
We're going to have you back and talk about that, kind of like, let's look back and see what actually happened. And, oh my gosh, Chris, the time always goes so fast. And I'm so glad that you were able to spend the time with us. And again, you guys who are tuning in, if it's your first time, thank you for tuning in for the first time. If this is your, more than first time, thank you again for spending your time with us every week. We really appreciate it. Like, share with a friend, drop a line, make suggestions. But Chris, thank you again for joining us. I'm really excited to see all of your new Proud Papa projects come out, and tell us quickly where we can find you online.
Yeah, my personal Instagram, CHRISKO112, Crisco112, my old DJ name, and 112 was my pager code, not to date myself. So that's how that number came about. And obviously for like true GameStop, GameStop, you can find all of their socials pretty much as like just at GameStop. Love to interact with anyone. And then obviously LinkedIn as well. If there's any business stuff that you guys want to pitch or talk to me about, that's probably the better channel to find me on.
Thanks again, Chris. We'll talk to you
All right.
everybody soon. Bye bye, everybody.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.